All right, so thank you for tuning in to Chopping at the Bit. I'm Kyle Letters, of course. This episode, I'm going to talk about something a little different. I'm going to talk about the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame voting. Because we all know every year, whenever it's this time of the year, the Hall of Fame becomes a big story, big issue because, recent years, we've seen, as baseball steroid era, a lot of those big stars have moved on, retired. So a lot of them have been filtering in to the Hall of Fame ballots and all that. So we've been seeing how, they've been kind of made. Well, I guess the baseball writers are making a statement by not letting them into the Hall of Fame. So we'll talk about a little bit of, why I think there is some hypocrisy in that from the baseball writers. But it's their right. That's their vote. They get to do whatever they want. Fine. Look at the one person who did make it through on this year's ballot, David Ortiz. So congratulations to him, of course. Big Red Sox fan. So I saw David Ortiz and his greatness in the postseason, regular season. The leader that he was for the Red Sox. After the whole marathon thing, he really, was on the forefront. So, of course I agree with him being a Hall of Famer, but it's kind of interesting that he did get in. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So I guess backpedaling first. So what gets me about, these baseball writers who are now trying to stand on their moral soapbox and talk about the players who, either, tested positive or were implicated, whatever. Names that were associated with steroids that they've been keeping out. Even though the steroid era had its purpose, baseball was struggling. I mean, it was falling behind, the NFL and the NBA for sure. But baseball as a whole couldn't handle that because baseball has been known as America's pastime. You can't be America's pastime but be number 3 amongst major sports. So that was the issue. I guess, it seemed like, offense was on a downturn. I think teams were going to like small ball. Pitchers were kind of dominating. I think ratings were suffering. So, baseball needed something. Then came, that summer chase between Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, where both of them were going night after night, hitting home run after home run, looking to set the home run record. I think, how did that go? Did McGwire hit more than Sosa, or Sosa? Well, either way, they both hit like, I think 60 plus home runs or something crazy like that. But baseball saw, it was leading story every night on SportsCenter. If Sosa or McGwire went up to the plate, for an at bat, ESPN was cutting away from whatever they were showing to show that at bat. So baseball was loving the attention that they were getting because they hadn't seen it in a while. Even though there was some talk about something not being right, Sammy Sosa, when he came up into the majors with the White Sox, I believe, he was a skinny guy. Now he was this muscle-bound dude just launching home runs, 400, 450, 500 feet. Mark McGwire was always a big guy in terms of being tall. But throughout the course of his career, he bulked up big time. And he was doing the same thing, launching 500 plus foot home runs. So while they were doing that, there were some people talking about, something not being right, blah, blah. Fast forward a little bit. Was it to the point where I guess baseball thought, I guess to save face, let's go ahead and do some steroid testing. Blah, blah, blah. And I think, they did like that one trial test just to see what kind of numbers would come up with steroid use. And I remember Ortiz ended up on that list, but baseball said like it was supposed to be anonymous. But somehow Ortiz's name came out. And I know Ortiz was, really upset by it because, he was trying to maintain that he was a clean player, blah, blah, blah. Sosa, McGuire, and then Bonds became part of the story as well because Bonds, a couple of years after Sosa and McGuire did their home run chase, Bonds, not only met their number, went way past it. I believe it's Sosa, McGuire, whoever hit the most hit like 60, like 65. And then Bonds came out of nowhere and, dropped like 73 on them. And Bonds, we all know, because, he came with the Pirates. He was a skinny guy who was actually on a Hall of Fame pace at that point, but story was that Bonds was a little jealous of McGuire and Sosa getting attention, so he started juicing up, and he went on to become a great home run hitter, because before he would hit home runs, but not like once he beefed up. He was more like a home run. He was more like a doubles hitter, a lot of speed. But anyway, the overarching story here is baseball knew steroids were an issue. They turned a blind eye to it because it helped them with ratings, it helped them with popularity, because they realized the long ball kept people's attention. At that point, people weren't going to sit there, for 2.5, 3.5 hours to watch your pitcher's duel. As entertaining as a pitcher's duel can be, not exactly what people go to the ballpark for. Which is funny, I feel like people would rather see a pitcher's duel in a playoff game than the regular season. Which I guess makes sense. There's 162 regular season games. You don't want to see a bunch of pitcher's duels. Playoffs is different. You're playing for a title, whatever. So, pitcher's duels, bad for the regular season. High scoring, home run filled games, great for the ballpark experience. So all that's happening. Baseball loves it. Once, I guess, government starts getting involved, because remember the whole court case, Rafael Palmeiro pointing his finger, whatever he said. I can't remember what he said. Basically, he was like, I've never used steroids. You got the whole Roger Clemens misremember and all that. So it was a whole mess. It was only because of that baseball acted like they really wanted to take it seriously. And now we are at the point today where, baseball writers, not all of them, because some of them vote in the guys who've tested positive, whatever, because what it does come down to it, baseball, more than any other sport, is all about numbers. They don't care about anything else but numbers. You could strike out 400 times. They don't care. If you hit 50 home runs, all that advanced metrics, WAR and WARP or whatever kind of stuff that, you and I probably have no clue how they calculate it, but, these baseball analysts lose their mind over it. But now, because some of these players took down some of the records of these older players that were held to a higher standard, now it was an issue. So then fast forward to the other day, you need to get 75% of the vote to be elected into the Hall of Fame. David Ortiz got 77.9%. So, grand scheme of things, he barely got in. But he got in. And like I said, Ortiz was, tied to steroids because of that first test. And I know that there were some writers who didn't like it. Most notably in the Boston area, you had, Dan Shaughnessy, who's never been a big, Ortiz fan, especially for the Hall of Fame. And he did say that he left Ortiz off of his ballot. But then there's other Boston writers who had a vote who voted for Ortiz. So here's where the interesting thing happens, at least to me. So Bonds gets 66%, he doesn't get in. Clemens, 65.2%, he doesn't get in. Kurt Schilling, which I don't think he was ever tied to steroids, but he has his political issues that rub people the wrong way, so he's 58.6%. Gary Sheffield, I believe there's a lot of questions about him, was at 40.6%, and Alex Rodriguez, we know he was tied to steroids, 34.3%. So when I first heard that Ortiz got in, more than his playoff success and all that, which I guess I'll talk about in a second here. The one thing I found was, if you look at all of those guys I just named, I mean, there's other people on the ballot, but those are the big names that are tied to steroids. The difference is David Ortiz was actually liked by the media, personality-wise. Barry Bonds was really short with the media. People didn't like him. Clemens, same thing. A-Rod was kind of seen as a phony, but Ortiz was a lovable character, and I actually think that's what helped him here. He was genuine with people. He was always smiling, that kind of stuff. Now, maybe, like I said, I think it helped him. Maybe that was the extra 2.9% that got him in, but I don't think that this is some type of statement that, okay, Ortiz got in, maybe now some of these other steroids people will get in. I don't see it. Ortiz will probably be the only one of them to get in. And I think at this point, Clemens, I think Bonds and Clemens are now off the ballot. So they go to the senior voting or whatever the next step is. I'm guaranteeing they're not getting in there. But yeah, it's just interesting year after year when Hall of Fame voting comes around, and we, you drum up the same stories about, let's see how the steroids guys did, blah, blah, blah. And then that's another thing, Roger Clemens is the poster child for steroids for pitchers because he's like one of the few who were tied to them. I find it hard to believe that he's the only one, or that there was so few pitchers in that era, because they're on the locker room. I'm sure pitchers saw some of these players doing stuff. If you ask some of them, they'll tell you. Now, of course, a lot of them were clean, but I'm sure some of them felt some pressure to do something themselves because, back in the day, you're throwing 98, 99, and 100. If guys made contact, it was, barely getting out of the infield, breaking bats and all that kind of stuff. Now you're throwing that to Bonds in them. Back then you're throwing to Bonds in them, and they could be late on the ball and they're just muscling it out opposite way. They're always playing with the pitcher's mound, raising it, lowering it, all that kind of stuff. So, as much as Clemens was, despised and disliked, sure, he isn't the only one. But yes, like I said, congratulations to David Ortiz. And as I said, he was a guy who, he came up with Minnesota. He was a skinny guy. Well, he wasn't skinny, but he was one of those taller, smaller framed guys. Got to the Red Sox. He got a little bigger. I think the thing that helped Ortiz a lot was he wasn't exactly like shredded. Like you saw Bonds. Bonds was a muscular dude. A-Rod wasn't really muscular, but he was just like he was like really big. But Ortiz, like I said, he kind of looked like a beer league softball guy. Of course, a little stronger, but he just had that kind of body type, and it kind of carried with him all throughout his years. And I think because of that, some people were a little more forgiving when his name came out, because you didn't have like the noticeable body change. But so like I said, with the Twins, career's kind of fizzling out. Gets to the Red Sox, slowly starts building his name. He basically was a DH. He'd play first base, in the postseason or whatever. And I mean, that's another thing. DHs have a hard time getting in because they're just seen as, they're just hitting specialists. They don't play the field. This case, like I said, Ortiz did. He mainly did in the postseason. He played, World Series, like against the Cardinals. He was playing first base a lot of those games. Well, I think mainly the ones in St. Louis, but he was out there in the field. He made some plays. He didn't completely embarrass himself at first, but I mean, he quickly grew, legend status in October, because we all know the comeback against the Yankees when they were down 3-0, best of 7 series. Ortiz went on that run where I think it was like game 4, he hit the walk-off. I believe it was extra innings. Game 5 was like later that day. He did the same thing, hit a walk-off. And then, the rest was history. Then went on to like sweeping the World Series. He had that postseason when he hit like 667 for the postseason. So like I said, he's clearly deserving of being in the Hall of Fame. I mean, I thought he was a guy who would get in over the other steroids peoples, but I had no clue that was going to be on this first ballot. That's probably the most surprising thing that they gave it to him on the first ballot. I thought it'd be, wait 2-3 years and then get in, but he's in. I'm happy, and we'll have to see if there will be some type of softer stance. I mean, at this point, we're out of the steroid era now. I don't know. I mean, some of the guys who are on the ballot that I guess aren't tied to steroids, I guess those are the names we'll be looking at the next couple of years to get in. So that's what Scott Rowland, who had 63%, Todd Helton 52%, Andrew Jones. So yeah, those are the names we'll be looking for in the next couple of years. Oh yeah, so I saw a story like Sammy Sosa also fell off the list. I mean, his numbers have always been, way down there. Yeah, him and McGwire had no shot at getting in. So yeah, and Kurt Schilling's another one that's. Well, Kurt Schilling's off the ballot now, but he's a guy who we all know why he didn't get in, Like I said, it was political stuff. There was that story with like the gaming company that he owned in Rhode Island that went belly up because of something with him. I can't remember that whole story. He had the thing with Baseball Tonight. He was in the booth. He gets relieved from that job. That might have been tied into politics as well. Which led to because that led to Jessica Mendoza getting into the booth or whatever. We all know how that's gone. So, like I said, Curt Schilling's one of those guys who was not likable. So yeah, Ortiz is in, happy. Baseball writers, I mean, get over it at this point. I mean, they're kind of off the hook now with Bonds, Clemens, Schilling, Sosa, those guys off the ballot. So maybe. So I'm guessing that this time next year it won't be a story, but I'm sure it will be because, like I said, those guys, I think, moved to the senior ballot, or you had to be at a certain number to move. I don't know how that works, and I don't have time to look it up. But yeah, so let me know what you think. Are you like me and like the fact that Ortiz got in? Are you of the mind that, you know, Ortiz was implicated on that first report, so that means he's, you know, part of the issue with steroids and he shouldn't get in like the rest of them? Or do you think that the writers are a joke and Bonds, Clemens, and all those guys should just get in? Because now, to go with that line of thinking, like, there's guys who played in like the 20s and 30s who are in the Hall of Fame who have sketchy pasts you wouldn't believe. They got in. I mean, I know Pete Rose is the big one because he was gambling on games and stuff that he hasn't gotten in. But we see a lot of people fighting for him to get in. So, I don't know. Baseball's weird like that. And I think it's part of the problem that they continue to have where they fall behind NFL and NBA. And, I mean, if they're not careful, as I've said before, you know, MLS is growing. NHL is, well, I mean, NHL's popular. I don't know if NHL will ever pass baseball. But MLS is one to watch. For sure. Because MLS is continuing to grow. It's expanding across the country. You know, young players are getting into soccer more. So, it does make you wonder what it would look like if baseball ever did fall behind MLS and became number 4. How would baseball act? And that's a whole other thing, because I've talked about that before. You know, baseball needs to look at itself and make some drastic moves in its game to make it more appealing. But we know with baseball, they're usually slow to act on stuff. So, I don't know. But, yeah, like I said, let me know what you think about the Hall of Fame voting. But hopefully you enjoyed this episode. You know, if you did, like, subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at Chompin' Podcast. You know, interact with me there. As I said before, you know, 2022, working on some things with the podcast here. So definitely, you know, subscribe wherever you're listening. That way, you know, drop any episode, you get notified. So for our YouTube people, hit the notification bell, all that. But yeah, work on some stuff. You know, when have any finality to any of that, we'll let you guys know. But yeah, so be safe. God bless. I'll catch you next episode. Quickly, next episode, talk some NBA stuff. And then there's some NFL stuff I want to talk about before we get into this weekend's games. So plenty to come. Stay tuned. I'll catch you next episode. All right. I'm out.